DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. We are joined now by Matt Babcock, NBA Draft Analyst for Babcock Hoops. Matt, good morning.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Matt, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Well, here's the deal. I didn't know this. I thought your name sounded familiar. I didn't know why. And PK said, well, yeah, I think we got to dig it up. I think there's a bunch of Babcocks who've worked in the NBA. So sure enough, it wasn't hard to dig up because you wrote a comprehensive family history and you put it right on your website for us. And it turns out you're talking to a guy who grew up in San Diego and a guy who grew up in Phoenix. So we're all about it. Look at us. We're practically family.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Small world. That's great to hear.
Who's Pete? Relation to you?
Pete. Yeah, Pete is my uncle. So there's Pete, Rob, and Dave. Dave's my dad. And so all of them have worked in the NBA for a really long time. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Grew up in it, and very lucky to have had the exposure in the NBA pretty much my whole life.
Yeah, I went to high school in Phoenix, a school called Thunderbird, and right at the same time, a school called Greenway opened, and they were our bitter rivals. So I hated your father, even though I never knew him. Or your uncle, excuse me, your Uncle Pete.
Yeah, that's great. That's funny.
So let's get right to it. The NBA draft. The Utah Jazz are drafting 5. 1 and 2 have been very predictable. Everybody's figuring that Cooper Flagg goes 1 and then Dylan Harper goes 2. That's pretty much etched in stone. But are 3 and 4 written in ink at this point, even if the order might flip? Is Ace Bailey going to hold on to that third spot, and is VJ Edgecombe 4 unless they flip? Of course, all this matters because Jazz fans want to know who's off the board before they pick at 5.
No, sure. I think the one that is the wild card here is Philly at 3. All season, Ace Bailey was sort of penciled in as one of the top 3 or 4 prospects. And he's an interesting player. He's got just about as much upside as anybody in the draft. But there are some question marks about his maturity. Is he going to be able to kind of tap into that upside fully? And there's been rumblings that Philly could look to trade that pick. They're sort of an interesting spot with their 2 star players, with Joel Embiid and Paul George. Are aging stars that have battled injuries, and they're set to make a ton of money. And so, really not clear what's going to go on at 3, which could create some interesting domino effects. And like you mentioned, could really affect a team picking right after them.
I heard through some folks here the Jazz aren't particularly high on Ace Bailey, and maybe they like this Fears kid out of Oklahoma, but obviously you got Edgecombe, you got the kid from Texas. If you are picking, or maybe just aside from that, of the players that I just named, who do you like the best?
I love Jeremiah Fears. I think, probably what is being discussed internally right now, obviously, the big shakeup with Austin coming in. I think the question internally would be, okay, how committed are we to Isaiah Collier? I thought he did really well towards the end of the season, and he's a young guy. Are they penciling him in as the point guard of the future? And if so, Jeremiah Fears doesn't make much sense. Even though I think Fears is a higher level talent, that's something they need to decide as a group. But I do love Jeremiah Fears. I think he had a terrific season. 6'3", 6'4" on-ball point guard, terrific in the pick and roll, which translates to the NBA very well. And keep in mind, he's only 18 years old. He reclassified up similar to Cooper Flagg. He should have been just a senior in high school this year. It was absolutely terrific for Oklahoma.
What's the problem with having too many guys, though, if they're really good? There are stories other times. I think the Phoenix Suns, right in your backyard, in PK's backyard, once upon a time, had 3 awesome point guards. So you make a trade and you get something. You can't pass on somebody because you already have somebody at that position, can you?
It just depends. I think, there's an argument to be made. Yeah, take the best player available. But I'm a believer that there does need to be a pathway for that player to have success or the level of success that you want them to. Having 2 point guards is definitely doable. I do see both of them as primary on-ball point guards. Isaiah Collier is on the smaller side, so it's not like a seamless fit. But you're right. There's a lot of teams playing multiple ball handlers to say more so than they did in the past even. But I think as Austin looks to kind of create a new vision. It's these things they need to decide. But yeah, I think Fears will be in play there. I think Trey Johnson can be an option for them, and he from a style of play standpoint, he's a better fit. He's an off-ball shooter, big wing, and so he would be a better fit. You just got to figure out what you're trying to do.
Charlotte drafts 4th. What do you anticipate them doing, knowing that it's somewhat of a guess here?
Yeah, again, it goes back to the 3rd pick. Who's available? My expectation right now is if VJ Edgecombe is there, I think they would take him. I think that would be a guy that'd be hard to pass on. Just an extreme athlete, plays so hard, and has already shown flashes of being able to shoot the ball. I think he's got star potential, but he could go 3. If Philly trades, I could see a team targeting VJ Edgecombe at 3. So again, let's see how it falls.
Colin Knippel at Duke. He can shoot it, but is he really in that group that'll be top 5, or is that the kind of guy who's better off as a 7, 8, 9 pick?
Yeah, personally, I would probably have him more like a mid to late lottery. His name has come up with some of these picks as an option, and I think with him, he's a safe pick. You know what you're getting. I think his game translates very well. He's an off-ball shooter, high IQ. I don't know if his upside is quite as high as some of these other guys we're talking about, but a guy that's 6'6", that shoot the lights out. You can plug and play a guy like that pretty much anywhere. And so I do think there's safety in him. And so, again, with these teams discussing things internally, how much are you valuing that safety? And that's, I think everybody will kind of value it a little differently.
Jaor Denim for BYU. It was a crazy situation. He comes over and everything is brand new, right? Kevin Young and his staff come in. And we saw some moments where we're thinking, oh, my gosh, this guy, how could he even possibly be a first-round pick, let alone a lottery pick? And then he got better. As things settled down, the team got better. And then we hear in the offseason, we talked to Travis Hansen. I'm sure you know of Travis, that he's his advisor, and the shooting has improved in these workouts. Travis was saying to us that he thought Jaor would go anywhere between 7 and 12. What's your assessment of that young man?
Yeah, that sounds spot on. I followed him closely this year. I was at that opening game in Provo, and that first month of the season, he was unbelievable. And we all jumped on the bandwagon. And then it's just very up and down. He got hurt, really struggled there in January when they got into conference play, finished strong, and then the pre-draft process has absolutely helped him. I was at his pro day in Chicago at the NBA Draft Combine. He looked great. He's already added some strength, shooting the ball really well. I think one thing, too, the way I see him long-term, BYU, they played him as a primary point guard. I see him more as a Swiss Army knife where he's sort of like a positionless creator. And I think not having the ball in his hands all the time will take a little bit of pressure off of him. In long-term, I think he could end up being a really, really good player. And so, yeah, that mid to late lottery, I think that's exactly where he should go.
Matt Babcock joining us, NBA Draft Analyst for Babcock Hoops. Now, there's all this hype around every draft, probably a little more around this one. And you listen to people, it seems like the first 5 picks are going to be Hall of Famers, the next 5 are going to be All-Stars, the next 5 are going to be starters for playoff teams. And we know it's not going to work out like that. So who are the lottery picks where you think there's just a big old red flag and teams ought to be careful and go find somebody else because this just isn't likely to work?
Yeah, I don't see anybody with total red flags. I think Ace Bailey's become the most polarizing prospect, at least at the higher level picks. And his upside is very high. It's just, again, there's questions there. And, I think depending on who you're talking to, how confident are you that he's going to be able to address those question marks? And so I would say Ace is probably the most polarizing. But, yeah, I wouldn't say as strong as necessarily having red flags.
How about the Duke big man? I'm intrigued by him because I watch him. We watch him a lot for what it's worth. Obviously Flagg got all the publicity and was the man and all that. So I was wondering how good he is because I'm hearing better things about him as we get closer to the draft.
Yeah, I mean, he's got some things he just can't teach. I mean, first of all, he's huge. He's 7'1", 7'2", huge wingspan, and he moves fluidly. And so I think the role he played at Duke, they didn't ask him to do a whole lot offensively. But I mean, it's easy to envision him being a starting five in the league for a long time, just as a defensive anchor, rim runner. But also in some international play before he got into Duke, he showed some flashes to shoot the ball from outside. And so I do think there's probably a little more upside offensively than some people would realize. And so, yeah, I think his name has been brought up too as high as number 3. I'm having a hard time actually believing he will go that high, but probably after Utah 6, 7, 8, 9, I think he'll probably have a good chance of being in that range.
Have you heard anything about who Austin Ainge might like, or is that one of the advantages of coming from Boston, where nobody was worried about who they were drafting late in the first round, and suddenly he's going to be in charge of making the 5th pick?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I mean, we're at this point we're sort of just sort of estimating the projections right now. These last couple of weeks, guys like myself and NBA personnel, a big part of what we're doing is just working the phones and trying to gather intel of figuring out who's doing what. But yeah, no, that process is really kind of kicking in full gear right about now.
They also have that 21st pick. Speaking of the Jazz, and I've identified 3 or 4 names, and who knows, how it's going to flush out when it comes time to pick. What do you think at that spot?
I think a lot of it depends on what they do with that first pick. I mean, I'd say chances are they probably wouldn't take guys that are too similar to one another. And then, also keep in mind, I mean, he learned how to do this from his dad, who's not afraid to wheel and deal. I mean, always a possibility of them moving around in the draft as well.
You get later, it seems like there's some foreign guys, maybe not at 21, but soon after that, who will get drafted. We watch a lot of college hoops, but the foreign guys are still largely a mystery, although we can go search them out on YouTube and other places. Any foreign guys you really like who might be a good late first-round pick?
Yeah, sure. One guy that comes to mind is Jaor Denim, who played in Slovenia this year. Young guy, he's huge, 6'11", stud athlete, moves well. I don't know if he'll be there at that point, but if he were, I think that would be a slam dunk pick.
I assume that you can speak a little bit about next year's draft, and in particular, BYU's got Debonsa coming in, and we've never seen such excitement as far as BYU basketball. What do you think that he needs to do to solidify himself as the top pick in the 26th draft when he's in college this coming season?
Yeah, no, he's a terrific prospect. I've seen him quite a bit. I'm actually going to see him this next week. He's going to be at the U19 USA basketball event in Colorado Springs, and just a very, very exciting prospect. He just checks so many boxes. He's got size, athleticism, well-rounded skill set, and as far as solidifying himself as the number 1 guy, keep in mind that there's another player coming to college this upcoming season, Darren Peterson, going to Kansas. He's right there too, sort of like a Dwayne Wade type player. But yeah, I'm very, very excited about both these kids. I think they're top tier prospects.
Do you expect these top tier prospects to have a big impact on college hoops? Because we saw this year teams that had these guys, and set Duke aside because they had 4 of them, including the number 1 guy who's a generational talent. But if you put 1 high draft pick on Texas, 1 high draft pick on Oklahoma, you end up with an NBA bubble team. NCAA bubble team.
No, sure. Yeah, I mean the landscape of college basketball obviously continues to change so much with the transfer portal. These college teams they're a lot older, more experienced, and honestly just better teams. And so I do think there's less impact of one and done guys. But I mean, look at Cooper Flagg this past year. I mean, he was terrific for Duke. I don't know if there'll be a ton of freshmen making a huge impact. I would expect AJ and Darren Peterson to make some waves, though.
You think Dylan Harper is a franchise-changing player?
He's got a chance. I think he's ready to play right away and contribute at a high level. Again, with all these guys, we're able to identify who's got the potential, who's got the upside. And time will tell if they're able to kind of fully maximize that potential. But I do think, as far as this group of top prospects, Dylan is more polished and ready to go, more than others.
A lot of these guys, I mean, we can watch their talent, but they're being drafted based on these interviews and interacting with them and talking to their coaches and who really has the drive to improve, because everybody's got to get a lot better. When you're working in the world of mock drafts, and how much access do you get to these guys? How much can you factor that in? You know, with all your family across the NBA how important that stuff is, but how much access do you get?
Oh, we get a lot of access, and in some cases, our access is better, at least in the early stages, because we're able to network with the players, with their parents and their handlers, whereas the teams have to wait till the pre-draft process. And keep in mind, it does catch up because they've got so many resources and they get full access during this time. But throughout the year, it's a huge part of what I do is sort of. I'm traveling, going to games a lot, and I'm dealing with everybody. And so that's definitely an advantage of not actually working for a team and having the red tape with rules and whatnot.
So set all the, who's got the wingspan and all that aside. Is there someone who with their poise and maturity has really impressed you? Man, when I was 19, I was nowhere near that.
Yeah, I think this draft as a whole, it does seem like a lot of really good kids. I remember when I first started doing this, 15, 20 years ago, there was a lot more guys with red flags and character issues. I think I'm not sure exactly what the reason is, but not as much negative intel as there used to be, and just a bunch of good kids, honestly.
Well, Matt, we appreciate the time. Thanks so much, and maybe we'll talk to you again as the draft gets closer. Thanks for coming on.
That sounds great. Thanks, guys.
Matt Babcock, NBA draft analyst for Babcock Hoops.
He enforced what I believed about today's young kid. That's what I've been saying for years now, is that the rep of, I don't want to go play for the Jazz, there's not nightlife. I've been saying, I think that doesn't matter. That kids are far more mature now. They're in a better spot collectively. You're going to have outliers, and so they won't have a problem playing here because they'll be mature enough to see, and their handlers will advise them, look at all the positives. I don't care that you can't go to a nightclub at 1:30 in the morning. That just gets in the way of what you're trying to accomplish anyway. And the knucklehead kid, I think, is just dwindling. And I've been saying that for years.
And for the people who don't believe you, because I'm sure there are people right now listening going, no way, PK, I don't believe you. I would just say, well, look at Indiana and Oklahoma City. It's not exactly L.A., Miami, and New York right there. So even if you can't say, well, it's happened for this kid and this team and it's led to all these wins and whatever here in Utah, okay, but you can look over there and see in Oklahoma City.
Right.
So
the young
to
black
some degree,
man today is far more sophisticated, and he understands all of his options as much as he can as a youngster, and realize this can be a really good option. I've been saying that for years.
I'd be interested to find out, maybe somebody who works in that realm, because basketball is so segmented. But somebody who's working with AAU kids and that, is it the more travel? Is it that the parents and handlers are savvy to
the exposure that they get.
Look at in previous years, this is what happened to this prospect and that prospect. Here's how you get offline. And so maybe, the old thing, don't learn from your mistakes, learn from other people's mistakes.
And their time is so allotted. It could still happen. I get that. But I just think that the idea of a young man not wanting to play in Utah, I think that's outdated. I also think if everything stays the same, which it probably won't.
Okay.
And that's all we have to go on right now. I'm leaning towards Fears as the guy that they take.
This deserves a longer conversation, PK. I do think there's a small group, and I think we're getting down to 2 or 3 players. But that's where Austin's, maybe he's a wild card. But it does seem, for a long time we talked about VJ Edgecombe, and I told you a while ago, I just don't think he's going to be there.
Well,
and I know there's people out there thinking, that's my guy.
Charlotte takes him at 4.
Yeah. Unless he goes 3. But 3 or 4. He and Bailey go 3-4. I can't guarantee. The 1 and 2 really seem written in stone. But 3 and 4, it seems pretty likely that those 2 will be off the board. Maybe not. Maybe we'll be surprised and one of them will slide to him, but I don't think so. So then it's Fears, Trey Johnson, and then Malou. from Duke.
I like
Malawach, you mean?
Malawach.
I like.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's why I said the Duke kid.
I know.
I keep
I
forgetting how to pronounce his name. I've watched him play 10 times.
Common Malawach.
I'm going to think a watch on my wrist, which I don't wear anymore. I think they may think Fears is too good to pass up, even with Collier.
Yeah.
It's not like Collier's. I'm a 10-year starting point guard in the NBA.
I would listen to that.
Build around me.
No, nobody's
Not
clinched.
yet.
Nobody's clinched anything, locked up anything. So if you got somebody who's going to be awesome,
But then I read that they fired 2 scouts because they didn't like Cody Williams. Blah blah blah. Now they hired some people here. I just saw.
Yeah, Marquis Newman, who was the Salt Lake City Stars GM, is now the head of pro scouting.
Yeah, so they've made a change there. Dump on the scouts. Cody Williams sucked last past season. That's a fact. But what does that mean? Does that mean he's a bust? And I'm not willing to say that. Maybe they are. I don't know. But I'm not willing to say that just yet. And so if they think, no, that was a horrible pick, we got to get off that as soon as possible. And maybe they find somebody that has his caliber, size, and dimensions and all that. And maybe they go for a Trey Johnson because they've decided Williams just isn't it. And maybe they have updated information because the season's been over now for 2 or 3 months and they haven't liked the progress. I mean, I'm speculating. I have no idea.
There's a lot that could be going on, though,
Yeah.
to your point. The thing about the scouts, I did talk to someone over the weekend who thought that too many dots were being connected as far as it falls on Cody. Apparently, one of the people who's let go wasn't responsible for scouting, because these departments are huge now, was not responsible for scouting domestic college players. Like, that wasn't their area of responsibility. So how could they be held accountable for that?
Well,
pick?
you can't.
Right.
He's
Exactly.
a domestic guy.
So
He's a U.S. guy all the way.
So maybe there's some dots there that shouldn't be connected. There are.
I don't know. Yeah, you're right. I got you.
Yeah, and the person I talked to is, and I'm not really sure what went into the other one. So there's definitely some gray areas still out there.
I'd have a hard time thinking, wow, this kid is a long-term bust after one season.
DJ PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. Everything you missed in this show next. Stay with us.